Hello, I'm Dr. George Beccaloni, a zoologist, evolutionary biologist, and science historian from the UK. I've been studying the life and work of the very important British scientist Alfred Russel Wallace for about 25 years, and I'm the founder and director of the Wallace Correspondence Project, which is working to transcribe and publish the 6,000 letters to and from him which survive. I would like to give you a very brief introduction to Wallace and his work, especially the important discoveries he made in what is now Indonesia between June 1856 and January 1862. Wallace was born in a small village in what is now Wales in 1823, and by the time of his death in 1913, he had become one of the world's most famous people. During his long life, he published over 1,000 articles and 22 books on a wide range of scientific and other subjects. Unlike many scientists then and now, he was actively engaged with many of the important social issues of his day. He was anti-slavery, anti-eugenics, anti-vivisection, anti-militarism, anti-imperialism, a conservationist, and an advocate of women's rights, and he wrote hundreds of articles arguing for his progressive views. Wallace became interested in the idea of evolution in 1845 after reading a speculative, anonymously published book on the subject. At that time, the idea was rejected by other naturalists, as no one understood how it could work. A mechanism was lacking. So interested did Wallace become in the idea that he travelled to the Amazon forest in Brazil to collect insect and bird specimens, which he planned to study back in Britain in the hope he might figure out how evolution operates. Unfortunately, however, after 4 years of collecting thousands of specimens, the most important part of his collection was destroyed when his ship caught fire in the middle of the Atlantic on his way home. Luckily, he and the crew were rescued by a passing ship, but he got back to Britain empty-handed. Just over a year later, he decided to continue his research and go on a collecting expedition to the region he called the Malay Archipelago, which is now Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and East Timor. He spent nearly 8 years in this area, almost 6 of which were in what is now Indonesia. Unlike most European explorers, he lived with local people and was respectful of their culture, sometimes viewing it as being superior to that of Britain. During his trip, Wallace and his local assistants collected about 126,000 animal specimens, including examples of 5,000 species which were new to Western scientists. It was in Indonesia that he discovered 3 of his most iconic new species: the giant bee, the standard-winged bird of paradise, and the golden bird-winged butterfly. It was also in Indonesia that he discovered the famous Wallace Line, an invisible barrier running between Bali and Lombok and up between Borneo and Sulawesi, which divides the region into 2 distinct zoological provinces. To the west, there are animals also found in mainland Asia, such as rhinos, elephants, and tigers, whereas to the east, the animals are more similar to those of Australia, with birds of paradise and marsupials like cuscus. Halfway through his trip in February 1858, while living in the village of Dodinga on Halmahera Island, Wallace finally discovered the mechanism which drives evolution, the process of natural selection. This is regarded as one of the greatest scientific theories of all time, but these days most people think it was discovered by Charles Darwin alone. In actual fact, Wallace and Darwin published the theory together in August 1858, and Darwin then explained their idea in more detail in his book Origin of Species, which was published 15 months later. Although Wallace received considerable credit for the idea during his lifetime, his role in the discovery was largely forgotten after he died. Myself and others are trying to correct this injustice of history, and one thing we did in October this year was to erect a monument in Dodinga to commemorate Wallace's momentous discovery there. I am very grateful to the British Embassy of Indonesia and Ambassador Dominic Jeremy for their involvement in this project. Thank you.